Hi, this is Iannielli of T-Gall Angel, and I want to do a quick um, summary to help people understand transgender and what it's all about. Appropriate title, I guess, would be Transgender 101. Transgender, what does transgender mean? Well, I was born a boy, but I identify as a girl. I've always identified as a girl, as early as age 3. So transgender is where your body is the opposite of how you feel inside, how you perceive yourself. So, like I said, I was born a boy, but I've always identified and felt and perceived myself as a girl. So that's what transgender is in a nutshell. Um, there was a gentleman, Harry Benjamin, who introduced the standards of care. He was a pioneer for transgender and transsexual people. And he was very influential in that area. And he started the surgeries. He was one of the pioneers in surgical procedures for transgender people who felt they needed to do the full transition, including the surgery. What is it like to be transgender? It's very complicated. It's very heartbreaking. It's very emotional, very hard and difficult. There isn't a day that goes by where you question yourself and you ask why this happened, why you have these feelings that not many people have. Being transgender is clearly in the minority, and if you're young, I didn't have this opportunity when I was young because I grew up in a different time, but I would suggest that you listen to how you feel and trust in your instincts. And it's okay to feel the way you do. There's nothing wrong. You need to research. The internet is a good source. But you need to talk to people, your parents, your friends, your teachers, someone who you trust. And it's also important to find a support group. And I know it's harder when you're younger. For me, I was young. I was 3 years old when I knew I was different. And I started wearing my sister's dresses. I was 12 and 13 when I started to go into my mother's closet and wear her shoes and her dresses and other pretty things. But I always felt like I was supposed to be a girl, and I didn't know how to tell people. So I lived a secret. It was hard for me to tell anybody. And I couldn't open up. I was very sheltered. I was extremely shy. I felt very awkward around girls, and I just didn't fit in with people. The only thing that saved me was my ability to focus on my studies and the good fortune of being recruited for a cross-country team in high school. My coach saved my life. I said this story before, but I was on the lunch line and I was thinking of going to extreme in overdosing on sleeping pills on the weekends. It was a plan I had. And on Friday, the day before, I would have considered this. On the lunch line, a math teacher came up to me, looked me straight in the eye and said, "I want you to run for my team." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I want you to run for my cross-country team." And I said, "But I don't run." And he goes, "I don't care. I want you to run for my team and I will teach you." And he saved my life, because I now felt like I was being given this opportunity, that someone believed in me. And many years later, I was invited to his daughter on Facebook. I hadn't seen or heard from a coach in many years, but through the miracles of Facebook and the Wonder Boy, Mark Zuckerberg, I was able to get back in touch with Coach, and his daughters found me and wanted me to participate and be a part of Coach's 75th birthday party. And I said, sure. And when I was there, I got reacquainted with my old running friends and teammates and with Coach. And when I had a little time to grab Coach's attention, I said, "Coach," I said, "do you remember when you came up to me in the lunch line?" And he goes, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Why did you come up to me?" And he said, "Because I knew you were in trouble." And I said, "Coach, you know, you saved my life." And I gave him a big bear hug. He really saved my life. And I can't express my emotions without crying, you know? It's like, he saved my life. I urge young people to talk to someone, to not be afraid. And if you find obstacles, then you have to get support, an emotional support, whether it's through a support group, a teacher, a friend. You must find someone to talk to. You cannot handle this by yourself. It's very hard going through this. It's a lifelong struggle. You may bury it and hide it like I did. I hid it for many decades of my life. I wanted to be normal. I just thought I was a cross-dresser. You know, alright, so I'm a guy who likes dressing like a girl. No big deal. But I didn't do it in public. I was a closet cross-dresser. But I didn't think that it was just that. No, because when I was 13 years old, I knew that I was a transsexual. And you ask me why, and I'll tell you why. Because I read about Dr. Harry Benjamin and his research and how he was very influential in developing standards of care for people like myself. And I read the standards of care. I read about people such as Dr. Renee Richards, um, Christine Jorgensen, um, Lynn Conway, so many. There are many, many male to female transsexuals. Um, but I knew that I was different and that I had to do something about it. I didn't start going for therapy until I was in my early 30s. So I went essentially 3 decades, well, 2 full decades without talking to anybody about it. It was my big secret. And then in my early 30s, I started to seek therapy. I remember driving down to, well, initially I went to Connecticut. I live in New York. And I drove to a gender identity clinic in Connecticut, a support group ran by a church. And I'll never forget that day because I dressed like a woman. It was the first time really being dressed and going that far, dressed opposite to my sex, but consistent to the gender I identified as. And I remember on the I-95, this horrific car accident where it had just happened. I just saw it in the aftermath. But car was flipped over and people were thrown from the car. And I remember a mother cradling her baby in the ditch. It was horrible. So I had to go look for a phone booth because I didn't have a cell phone back then. And I called 911 and I said, awful car accident. And I tried to remember the exit number. And I said like 7 people down. There were about 7 or 8 people down. I didn't know if they were hurt badly or I don't even want to fathom the worst scenario. But I called 911 and then I made the turnaround to make sure that the emergency were on the scene. And shortly thereafter that call, there were fire engine and emergency workers and ambulance. And I then headed back in the direction where I was originally driving towards Connecticut to attend this support group. And at the support group, we had to introduce ourselves and identify how we identified. So when it was my turn, I said my name. And I said I identify as a male to female, transgender girl. And we all talked, and I found it was helpful. But it was a one-shot deal for me, because it was too far. And I didn't know any places local. But it's important that you do things that will help you get connected with other people to get the support you need. That's mandatory. That helps. We all need that in our life. And there's no shame in coming to terms. I didn't fully come out till my early 50s. And if I can do it, anyone can, but they need support. And they can't feel like they have the world against them. Just take it one step at a time. That's all I can say. I love you guys.